If you watched the last two videos on my channel, you may be wondering the truth about my DaBaby Easter egg.
Shy.
Dude, what if? Oh my god!
Well, in this tutorial, I will show you exactly how it works and how you can easily add extremely random events into your own maps. This will also be the first video for the month of blocktober. This whole month I'll be trying to upload videos that are more focused on level design and things of that nature, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. Now, I'll be using Gmod and Classic Hammer for this video because I want to show you exactly the setup that exists in my map, but if you're using Half-Life Alyx or s&box or any Source 2 game, these entities also exist inside of those games, and it will be exactly the same concept. But this can be applied to really any game engine since a lot of this video is just going to be general concepts. And if you are using Source 2, you can utilize some features like vscripts or like s&box has custom hammer entities you can create. The things we call Easter eggs have been in video games since some of the earliest games were ever made. Originally, they were just secret credits or text hidden somewhere. Custom source levels have a long tradition going all the way back to Quake modding of having some of the best Easter eggs of any games. Now, my maps usually contain a lot of very obscure references and inside jokes, but I don't consider most of those to be really true Easter eggs. This, however, I do consider to be an Easter egg, although it's a very silly and simple one. This video isn't going to be a full source engine logic tutorial, but more of a basic concept overview to give you some examples and ideas for your own levels. The idea to have a face appear if you stood in this area long enough was actually an idea from the SBS staff during the early playtests. I can't remember who exactly. But the actual hole in the wall was here since the beginning and is simply a bit of world building. It implies that someone was trying to, break through the wall, and there's a lot more to this whole underground area than meets the eye. When it comes to level design, I like to think of Easter eggs as two distinct parts: the effect and the trigger. The effect is the end result that the player will see. In this case, it's this sound and image that appears. The trigger are the various actions required by the player in order for them to see the effect. In some cases, the trigger is nothing, and the effect is simply hidden somewhere in the level. For example, the box of Scooby Snacks hidden in Hogwarts, or the classic Halo 3 Easter egg of shirtless Jason Jones hiding in a hard-to-reach area. I have fond memories of me and the boys trying to grenade jump across that gap. So when adding an Easter egg, or really any random event into your map, you must first actually figure out what your effect is going to be. You're only limited to your own abilities here. The effect could be anything, really. A noise, an image, text on the screen, the player teleported to a secret area and forced to fight off hordes of zombies. The possibilities are endless. But regardless of what kind of effect you choose, it's super useful to always try and control it through the use of a logic relay. A logic relay is one of the most basic and most important logical entities. It allows you to fire multiple outputs through a single input, essentially creating logical groups. Here you see the logic relay that I use to control my effect. It's named DBBY trigger. Ideally, you'll want to use a more logically coherent naming scheme than I do because things can start to get really confusing later on. So when this relay is triggered, the funk brush named DaBaby is enabled, and the sound named Let's Go is played. And 3 seconds later, the trigger disables the funk brush again. The beauty of this is that once we develop our Easter eggs trigger logic, we don't have to worry about timing or tuning our effect. We can do that right now simply by running entfire dbby_trigger, and all of our outputs will fire. Another cool benefit of doing it this way is that the effect can be controlled from multiple different sets of trigger logic, so you can have more than one thing actually activate the effect. So now on to the trigger logic. This is where you can start getting super nasty, and you're really less limited by your own abilities and more limited by what you think the player is capable of solving. I mean, after all, you do want your Easter eggs to get found eventually, right? Then again, there are computer games from the 70s with new Easter eggs still being discovered today, so you can have your effects triggered in an endless number of ways. You could have the player press a hidden button, shoot multiple targets in a specific order, bring special items to a location, a keypad code. You could require multiple players to stand in different locations at the same time. You can even have things that only get activated at specific times of the day or days of the year, or even like one day of a certain year, one time. Like on Hogwarts, if you flush the toilets in the correct order, you unlock a secret teleport. Again, the possibilities are truly endless. So for this Easter egg, I wanted it to be a random chance. Like, ideally, an unsuspecting player just goes and walks up to this hole in the wall, and if they're lucky, the effect will happen. Doing this in multiplayer can get a little tricky unless you know what you're doing. So first I start off with a trigger multiple. This is named DaBaby_wait. When a player first touches this trigger, it disables itself. This is very important because it lets us create a delay between dice rolls. This dice roll is achieved by firing the pick random input on the entity named DaBaby_chance, which is a logic case entity. A logic case is an incredibly useful logical entity that can be used in multiple ways. In our situation, we're treating it as a dice roll, but logic cases can also be used in conjunction with entities like math counter to create a set of different cases depending on the input. So this here is the heart of our Easter eggs trigger logic. When the trigger multiple fires pick random to this logic case, it will randomly choose one of these cases I have defined as an output. All but one of these 12 cases fires a logic relay named DaBabyReset, and each of them has a bit of a different amount of delay between them. DaBabyReset simply re-enables our trigger multiple, DaBabyWait, after a delay of 20 seconds. I do it this way so I can tune the base reset delay for every outcome just by changing this one relay. Going back to the first logic case, you'll see that the final case, number 12, fires the input pick random shuffle onto an entity I have named split. This split entity is another logic case. This logic case only has 2 output cases defined. Case 2 will reset the trigger multiple, but case 1 will activate our Easter egg effect and it will reset the trigger after a long delay. The reason I control the reset of the trigger inside of this and not inside of the effect relay is very important. The effect relay just controls just the effect. The trigger logic and the effect logic are 2 distinct logic chains that do not interact with each other at all. This means if the effect is triggered from somewhere else while the logic chain of the Easter egg trigger is currently processing, it shouldn't cause that many issues. But let's say we did reset the trigger multiple via the effect relay. The worst case scenario in this situation would be the trigger multiple being reset earlier than the command to reset itself comes from the Easter egg trigger logic chain, thus creating the possibility of a stacking reset command. This isn't really a big issue here because the trigger logic chain kind of has like a lot of delays built into it, but when you're working with your own logical chains, you always need to take care not to create like infinite loops, especially when you're dealing with a multiplayer level. Once again, going back to our first logic case, notice our 12th input is pick random shuffle instead of pick random. When your map loads, the game creates a table of all possible outputs for every single logic case entity. Pick random, which is what we used initially, simply makes a random selection from the list. Pick random shuffle, on the other hand, will initially pick a random choice, but every time it's ran after that, it will never fire that same choice again till all of the other choices have been made, thus resetting the list. Using this in the 50-50 scenario right here gives me multiple very cool uses. So one is just increasing the randomness of the event actually occurring by almost 50%, and secondarily, it stops the Easter egg effect from happening twice in a row quickly. Adding more outputs to this logic case will make the event more random exponentially. So walking up to the trigger, you metaphorically have to roll a 12 and flip a coin to get the Easter egg to occur. However, because we know that every other time you roll that 12, you will always get the effect, the chance is a little bit more than 1 in 24. But there is a final wrench to throw in the situation. The levers. This is the part of the video most of you watching are likely most interested in. So what do the levers do? Well, I'm not going to explain what they all do, but I will say currently only one of the levers makes the baby Easter egg fully disabled. So for this and possibly other map features, I use these levers almost like a random state machine, except it's driven by actual players randomly setting the levers to be up or down. And by the way, these levers do not control the randomness of the streetlight in the Muggle shop on Hogsmeade. That's controlled via an entirely closed logic chain, and it has nothing to do with these levers. I did this to deter people who stand there forever trying to get the Easter egg to work, since there's always a possibility that one of the levers in an area totally inaccessible to them is in a state that makes the entire effect disabled. All the lever does is disable the logic relay that controls the Easter egg effect, again, ensuring that the logic chains are completely isolated from each other. The Easter egg trigger logic chain actually still continues functioning even if the effect logic is fully disabled. It is also possible that the lever that disables the effect is randomized each time the map is loaded. I can't show you the rest of the logical entities in this area, but I will describe how you could achieve that functionality. Each lever will in some way trigger a unique logic relay. However, each of these relays will start disabled. We can then use an entity called a logic auto to automatically activate a logic case when the map is loaded. The logic case will randomly pick one of the relays to enable. Each relay could be set up to then fire another relay or even a logic branch entity, which is kind of like a logical light switch, and it would easily allow you to enable or disable an effect or control other parts of your level. So, as you can see, you can really create some interesting control systems just using this one basic example. So that's it. That's the entire effect and trigger logic for my DaBaby Easter egg. The next time this map is updated, the entire system may be changed. I'll likely remove the lever disable system since it's kind of clear from my last video that even with it enabled 100%, it can still take a very long time if the map doesn't like you or you're giving off negative vibes. I hope if you're watching this and you're a level designer, this has given you a good place to start and maybe some cool ideas on how you can implement your own Easter eggs into your maps. It is essential that we continue honoring the long-time traditions of the great level designers from our history, one of those being having epic Easter eggs in our maps. If you haven't checked out RP Hogsmeade SBS yet, I believe the server swaps between Hogwarts and Hogsmeade once a week. It's a really cool map with a lot to explore, assuming the badmins don't stop you. Either way, make sure you gently press that like button and slap that big blue subscribe button, gamers, because I'll be back next Saturday with another epic video.